while I want to believe it, while I want to be excited about this team, and I am to a certain extent, I cannot go there because of Robert Saleh. And I heard Diana Rossini talking about it with Boomer and Gio coming in, with Stu Gatz and Gio as he's filling in for Boomer. Yeah, we'll get there later. So I heard that coming in, and she's talking about, Saleh's going to take it up. Bull crap. Robert Saleh, as I've said many times before, is the worst head coach in the league. You could say that there are some unknowns, sure, but nobody has been worse at their job as a head coach in the NFL than Robert Saleh. And him being there, I just can't get past that. I think Saleh's going to be the problem that prevents the Jets from getting to their ultimate goal, whether it be to the AFC Championship or even a Super Bowl.
No, it's a Super Bowl. There's nothing short of that when you go all in like they have. It's a Super Bowl. Oh, man. Yeah, first of all, it's awesome the football's back. And I think that in the NFL, there's really three situations pertaining to coaches in terms of like the direct correlation between result and head coach. You either win because of, like a Belichick, a Parcells, and we all know that Robert Saleh's not in that category. I think there's a lot of other coaches that it's fairly neutral. It's fairly benign. Like the influence is there, but it's not palpable. It doesn't elevate. It doesn't derail. It's kind of a wash. And then there's coaches that you win in spite of. And if the Jets are going to win this year, they're going to win in spite of their head coach, which I don't love that recipe and that feeling coming into a season. But I got to tell you, I think given the roster, I think they can. Right.
Now, are you saying that because you have to as a Jets fan? Again, it's easier for me. While I'm going to root for the Jets, both the Jets and Giants this year, I want to see good New York football.
Yeah, be nice.
Least, can you get us to October, for goodness sake? So I want to see that. I want to see Rodgers be healthy. I want to see the Jets light this town up because I think it would be so exciting. But I don't have the emotion the way that you do toward it. So it's easier for me to take that emotion out. You as a fan, and I know you could do your job as a broadcaster regardless of that, but it's harder to pull that out. Like, if you want to get excited about the Jets, you have to ignore the fact that you don't believe in the head coach. And I know Jet fans are going through that because how can anybody believe in Robert Saleh?
Well, I don't. I don't. I mean, straight up don't. Right. I don't know how I can be more transparent and blunt and raw than I just was. I don't believe in him. I think he's a detriment. So there's so many variables for this team, starting with Rodgers' health, that and Tyron Smith, and do they get Devontae Adams? All things that will navigate throughout the summer.
What's up with Reddick, by the way?
Yeah, that's more of a Joe Douglas thing, and we'll get to that coming up a little bit. I think that Robert Saleh I understood what he tried to do by, trying to seize the wheel of control of the car again, the way he described Rodgers' absence the other, for the OTAs, right?
Yeah.
Now, it was a small flex, but it was a flex. I mean, you don't have to look too hard to understand or really understand psychology too much that's what he was doing. Robert Saleh might not be a very good coach. He's not a dumb man at all. And he knows the narrative about him, and he's out to dispel it. How do you do that? Well, the first time you start quarterback's not there when he's supposed to be there, literally, legally, from an NFL contractual point of view, legally, he's not there. And you do a little flex. It means nothing until the fourth quarter and things are moving fast and there's timeouts and there's down the distance. Do I punt? Do I go for it? And I don't think he's going to be very good at that. I don't. But as long as Rodgers is the quarterback, I know that this sounds insane. I don't think it matters.
Yeah, and you have to hope that that's the case. See, I think eventually it will matter. I just don't believe it's sustainable throughout the course of an entire season to have one guy, in this case Rodgers, be the quarterback, be the offensive coordinator, be the head coach, be the guy that everybody looks up to.
Yeah.
That, to me, is a recipe for disaster. Now, I know you're going to say, all right, well, Saleh's going to run the defense, sure, and that's not Rodgers' thing. Yeah, but everything else is going to be Rodgers. That's a lot to put on him. At his age, coming off that injury.
Don't you think he wants it?
Yeah,
I think he relishes
I
this.
do, and I think that if anybody could handle it, he could. But at this age, coming off that injury, that's a lot. I don't care how many VPs you want or how many Super Bowls you have. That's a lot to ask of anybody. You need, and by the way, even if he can do it, you still need a leader of the team to be the head coach. Like you can't have it be another player on a team.
I would not have brought him back. I understand that they're so.
You said that at the time. There were many options out there.
We both said it. Cole Horrible. Let Vrabel, get Vrabel in the building. That ship has sailed, so, you got to move forward here. Listen, it's not perfect, and with the Jets, it seems like it's never going to be perfect. But I would much rather have, an aging, all-time, brilliant thrower and decipherer of, if you will, of the game of football, mentally, and he can still sling it. Not quite like Mike White, but he Boyle, he can
Timmy
fling.
Boyle can
Timmy Boyle.
spin it.
But I'd rather have that and a head coach who is more of a problem than an asset than an average quarterback and a great head coach. So that's why, again, it's not ideal. But I just think that there's enough on this roster to work around that. I don't mean that.
Right.
There's nobody stamping the Super Bowl here, but.
Well, there are people picking the Jets to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm not one of them yet. I'm definitely not going there. But I believe this with all my heart. If you go, 1 through 53, Jets have a top 5 roster in the NFL.
Right.
They have a top 5 roster in the NFL.
And by the way, I'm not saying that I disagree.
And their division's getting weaker.
I'm not saying that I disagree with your thought on would you rather have the great quarterback and the crappy head coach versus the great head coach and the crappy quarterback.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, now we're talking about for 1 year. Obviously, long term, you'd much rather have the greater coach.
For sure.
I would anyway. Building the program moving forward. I've just seen it work before, and you could win with even not the greatest quarterback. But also, Rodgers, he's past his prime.
Do we know that? Honestly.
Yes, I think that we do. And I love him. You know that. I do love Rodgers. He is past his prime. Could he still get it done? Sure. He's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now.
I don't think he needs to be.
Okay, well, to what, though?
I think he's got to be top 10.
To get them to the playoffs? Sure.
No, to win a Super Bowl, I think he's got to be clearly top 10, which I think he could be.
Winning a Super Bowl takes a lot.
I know.
That's the thing. Like, we're holding the Jets to a standard that they haven't even made the playoffs. They haven't made the playoffs in about 14 years, and we're talking about the Super Bowl. So they're going to be held to a much higher standard. That means Rodgers, at his age, coming off that injury, is going to be held to the standard of his prime. Can he be that? I'm not so sure. And then Robert Saleh, who is in my mind, worst head coach in the league. And even if you do it without me saying the worst, like, where are you ranking him? If you do it fairly, where would you rank Robert Saleh? Like, he's certainly bottom 5 if at best.
Yeah, bottom 5, bottom 6, bottom 7. No question.
At best.
No question.
So now how is a team with a quarterback off of that injury, past his prime and his age, age 40, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And one of the worst head coaches in the league, how is that going to win a Super Bowl?
Well, the only thing that I would say is, and to refute or to push back, as I'm going to try, because nobody really knows the answer, there's a lot of examples in history that, in the NFL, I'm not going to go to the other sports where, it started horrendously. And one is Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells was almost fired right away. And, then Phil Simms got healthy. Then the defense grew up. Then he had a couple of horses up front as offensive lineman. Boom, champion a couple of years after that. So now the difference is that this has been multiple years for Robert Saleh. I think the spoken word is much more important now than back then. Back then, Parcells said something, even before he became Parcells, that wasn't really challenged by players. Now, everything, there's a million clicks, and we're going to hit it on the radio, and all the shows, and all the articles, and all the debates, and all the topics that stem from that one little statement that goes awry. It really complicates a head coach's job. I understand that. My fear, now nobody thinks that Robert Saleh doesn't know football. Of course the man knows football. If he could just, and it might be too late. It might be. If he could just clean up the press conferences, because that's what's complicated his world. Instead of being direct and blunt and not worrying about offending or getting separation from guys in the locker room, they're not your buddies. They are your players. And I can promise you, the moment something goes really awry, they will abandon you.
But
Stop kissing their ass.
And what about holding these guys accountable?
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. So I don't even care about what he says in the press conference, although that's a problem. But actually hold them accountable. Stupid penalties, looking clueless on the sideline.
Yeah.
There's a lot there that I want to be excited about the Jets, and I am to a certain extent, but I have a ceiling on what they could do because of the head coach.
All right, let's get to it. It's BT and Sal. By the way, good morning. 888-808-1019. Brandon Tierney, Sal Licata Show inside of our Town Fair Tire Studio. Friends at Town Fair remind you that you always get the lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. They got receivers. They got horses up front, both sides of the ball. Secondary looks great. Rodgers is healthy now. All-timer, running backs, weapons. They got it all. Can they win with the coach? Let me get Adam, South Jersey, BT and Sal. Adam, what's happening?
My favorite show on the planet. Good morning, boys.
That's
We're
right.
talking Jet football.
Much
we
better
are
than that
talking
Stu
Jet
Gotts guy
football.
down the hole coming in for a couple days here.
Hey, listen. You know,
He's
I'll take
afraid
you
of you, I
guys,
think.
the two of you guys, over one Stu Gotts any day of the week. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we're talking Jets and Robert Saleh. You know, BT, I've been telling you this since before you and Sal got together when you were with Tiki. And I told you this a few weeks ago. I'm terrified this year because the potential is there, roster-wise, for this to be a 13-win team and for all of us Jet fans for the first time in over a decade to actually smile. But I look at the sideline, you know, you just said some key words, man. I know from the time I was a little kid in Marine Park playing for the Brooklyn Hurricanes, when we won championships, it's because we had great leaders of men. Our coaches were great leaders. They showed us the path. He can't show them the path because he doesn't know the path. And that's what scares me. You know, the lack of discipline. If something goes awry, BT, have you ever seen a year where something doesn't go awry? Where something
Right.
Not in the NFL.
Right.
No, always.
So something inevitably will go wrong, Adam. You're right.
Right. It will go wrong, Sal. It's a matter of how do you handle it. When you have a great leader of men, you can navigate the rough waters. When you don't, you get Mike White T-shirts. When you don't, you get a mess like we have with Zach Wilson. These are the messages you get when you hit these controversies and these tough times. And I'm just scared that they're going to come out the gate. You look at their schedule after San Francisco. They easily, even if they lose San Francisco, could be 5-1.
Yeah.
But then what happens when you hit the tough part?
Well, here's the thing.
Someone gets hurt.
I got you. Thanks for the call there, buddy. And yeah, the schedule is pretty soft, you know, for a while there. I don't want to get, too in the weeds on that now. And it shouldn't have to be soft. You know what I mean? Like, the Jets really do have that roster that is, listen, it's subjective. There's no definitive measurement. Let's hit a button. Think. The Jets have the second best roster. No, I mean, but I think by most people's accounts who know the game, both sides of the ball, all encompassing, it's one of the better rosters in the NFL. It guarantees nothing, but it does set you up theoretically to hit, a level of altitude that the Jets never hit. I was thinking about this, though. Like, as much as Salah complicated things a year ago with the press conferences and the lack of clarity and clue sometimes with the quarterback position, don't you think, Sal, if Rodgers is healthy, really doesn't matter what he says? Because Rodgers provided his head's in the right space, and I believe it will be. This man wants to win, despite some of the other nonsense that he jumps into. I just think that he's going to, if he's playing well and he's healthy, he's going to marginalize the coach. Like, Salah's going to be less important. That's why I think that they can win in spite of Salah.
Maybe to a certain extent, but ultimately, especially in the NFL, I just think it's so important to have a competent head coach. Think about this. Like, I'd rather have, forget about the quarterback versus the coach, what we talked about before. I'd rather have a lesser talented roster and a better head coach. Like Brian Dable, for example, a couple of years ago, where Dable took look at the Giants had no talent. They had no talent. He took that team led by Daniel Jones, and all Daniel Jones did was run the football. They didn't have a great defense. They didn't have a good offense. I mean, they were average at best everywhere. At best, with no talent, they went to the playoffs and won a road playoff game. So I'd rather have that than have the ultimate talent roster with a head coach who is, I think, one of the worst or the worst in the league. And now you're going to see it play out because in our minds it sounds great. Like, yeah, Rodgers is back and they have all these weapons and it should be fine in spite of the head coach. But you know this. We're going to be watching the games. There's going to be some crucial plays or some stupid penalties or some bad timeouts or a bad challenge or a bad play call. And it's going to be on Robert Saleh, and he's going to cost them games and hold them back. I'd much rather have the coach who knows what he's doing to formulate the game plan week in, week out than have the talent on paper.
Do you think, boy, I hesitate to even throw this out. It's the first day of training camp.
Right.
But given the circumstances and given the pressure and given the urgency and the finality soon of Aaron Rodgers' career and what Joe Douglas has at stake this year, if it got really sideways,
yeah, but then what?
Don't you have to do something mid-season?
But for what?
I don't know.
Like Nathaniel Hackett?
I don't know.
And by the way, that's the other part of the problem here.
Like, it's got to be attacked with that sort of.
Right.
I don't want to be redundant with the use of the word urgency, but it's got to be bottom line. That's it. We can't mess around.
I understand, but it would be easy. First of all, they should have done that in the offseason. And let's just say, okay, well, they didn't, so here we are. Wouldn't it be easier if you had a competent offensive coordinator? Like, it's not even just Salah. Salah's so bad as a head coach that you're so reliant on the offensive coordinator, and the Jets have one of the worst offensive coordinators in the league because Aaron Rodgers loves him. This is all on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's not a recipe for success.
That's not the smart way to build a team? Really? Ralph's in Manhattan, BT and Sal on the Fan. Ralphie, what's happening?
What's happening, guys? You know,
Ralphie boy. What's
happening? What's happening? Been a while. I always prefer the talent on the field. Now you have a coach who's underwhelming. You know, I'm being kind when I say underwhelming, but you have a guy who knows his X's and O's. I don't think he's quite as bad as you're making him out to be, Sal. But nevertheless, Rodgers, to question whether Rodgers is past his prime is absurd. I mean, the guy's got one last paycheck, and he got it, boy, big time, right? And he talks about, I've seen him on several venues. Every word out of his mouth is some other kind of ancillary subject other than football. I truly believe, now you can't go on the football field and embarrass yourself. You're not going to go in out of shape, physically, all those things. I understand that.
Yeah.
But football is probably about 4 or 5 on his agenda. And that's pretty sad when you're getting paid a king's ransom.
Hold on a sec. You don't know that to be true. You surmise that. And by the way, I completely disagree with you. I know that he delves into other things, but I think that the modern athlete is just kind of predisposed to do that no matter what. I mean,
and that's
you know what I mean? Like guys have podcasts during the season. Guys, they just navigate it. It's a new athlete.
I'm with you completely on that. I don't feel these guys should be one-sided and narrow-minded as in the past.
Yeah.
But to him, it's gone overboard. And again, I'm always searching because I want to see his attitude. I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to be the naysayer.
Yep.
But I see his approach, and I hear his comments, and he's so changeable. One time you'll hear him say one thing, and you'll take it as fact. and the next time he'll come out, he'll counteract his point in the past, and you don't know where he's coming from.
Right, but why do we care though what he says? Like I could not care
because
less.
What he says translates to the field.
No, it doesn't.
Not at all, Ralph. And thank you for the call. I couldn't care less what Rodgers says, and that has nothing to do with me saying he's past his prime. I'm saying he's past his prime because he's 40 years old, coming off a significant injury. And by the way, the last year that he was healthy, he threw more interceptions than in the prior 2.5 seasons combined. The last 3 years combined for Rodgers prior to his last season healthy, he threw 13 interceptions. Last year, his last healthy year.
When they lost to the Lions on that Sunday night, that last game.
Exactly. Yeah. He threw 12. Right. They missed the playoffs. They were 8-9.
How about this? If he throws 12 this year, the Jets really might win the Super Bowl. That's the point. Think about that. If you get the 25, 26, 28 touchdowns in grade D, I mean, I'd probably sign up for 12 picks right now.
Understood, but I'm just giving you the example of why I said he's past his prime. Rodgers in his prime was one of the great quarterbacks the sport has ever seen.
Indisputable.
So Rodgers at 41, is he going to be as great a quarterback as the Jets have ever seen? Maybe. Mm-hmm. Could he still get to the playoffs and do some damage? Maybe. But to me, you can't say somebody's in their prime when they're coming off a season-ending injury last year, in their 40s, and the last time we saw him healthy, in comparison to his prime, it was not on that level.
Listen, in your defense, I think it's a very fair statement. I believe it's the Aaron Rodgers revenge tour that's going to be one hell of a fun show to watch. What worries me is the coach.